talking today with Danielle Teychenne. Thank you very much, Danielle, for talking to us. I wondered if you could tell us where you've come from and what position you are in at the moment.
Sure. Well, I studied a Bachelor of Film and Digital Media at Deakin, and I graduated in 2013. From there, I worked casually for Deakin as a learning resource assistant, so creating videos, animations, and that was a really great grad position for me. And then from there, I applied for an interactive media developer role, and it's been 1 year working full-time for Deakin at Deakin Learning Futures, so it's been fantastic.
Great. Yeah, when you applied for the interactive media learning role, did they explicitly actually tell you that you'd be working with some forms of gamification, or was that part of the whole deal, or did you kind of come
I think, well, with any sort of key selection criteria made by a HR department, it's always very vague. No, they just sort of stated like interactive layouts, animations, videos, web-based learning materials, nothing specific.
Right, and so you've sort of started to invent yourself as interactive learning, absolutely, but also bring gamification in.
Yeah.
And is that something that you've did you engage with that at all in your studies?
No, I didn't. Actually, I'm kicking myself that I didn't take. There was a class by Rosemary Woodcock, and it was the history of interactive entertainment. And I don't even think it runs anymore. I'm actually kicking myself that I didn't take it.
It's a great promo for everyone else.
No, my interest in gamification sort of sparked when I finished at Deakin, and I sort of thought to myself, as everyone does, what do I do with myself now? So I decided to invest in web development, and so I was learning via online courses like Team Treehouse, which was completely gamified, like in a structural way, and also content gamification. So structurally it was, you would do an exercise, you'd watch a video, you'd read a document, and you get 10 points for that. And then content gamification, you would do everything and then, you get a reward video. And well, that's probably still structural, but the reward videos like had a narrative, and it was addictive for me. And I was like, why isn't higher education like this? This is fantastic. Yes, that's where it all sparked.
Okay, fantastic. I mean, that's what I noticed. I mean, gamification has been defined quite specifically in terms of corporations, companies making a game for some kind of profit or branding exercise, enhancing their reputation, that kind of thing. But is that how you see it, or do you see it more broadly in terms of, as you say, education, but just what I'm calling in this topic, the gamification of everyday life, insofar as the example that I think of and talk about a little bit is when I joined LinkedIn, suddenly the site was trying to structurally prompt me to get to 100%, so I was amazing or awesome or whatever it was telling me to do. And I didn't care about it, but I'm sure there'd be a lot of users who care about that kind of reward. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think gamification principles could be applied to anything. I mean, there's not one cookie cutter model, and especially when you look at higher education, every class is different, and there's different approaches you could take, and some approaches might not work, but I think it could be used for everything. And it's already in our lives when you think about rewards programs for shopping, like you said, corporate rewards programs, but I think students would respond well to gamification in higher education.
Yeah.
Especially digital native students.
Yeah,
look at Facebook, that's like, we're rewarded socially for using that every day.
We're talking about the power of self-gratification, not necessarily in a judgmental way, but I mean, that's kind of what learning has always been about, when you love getting that mark back. And this is just another way of assessing competencies and all that kind of thing. Can you tell us a little bit about the kinds of specific games that you've been developing and what kind of media you're using? Because one really interesting thing you told me is that you can make a game using Microsoft PowerPoint.
Yeah, you can. I make pretty simple games using Microsoft PowerPoint. It's just a matter of making links, and so at the moment we're working on a project to engage nutrition students with legal documents and legislation for food regulation, which is it's so boring, and students don't want to read legal documents. And so what we decided to do was create a narrative where a health food shop owner, he's decided to campaign for the legalisation of hemp food products in Australia. So you join him on an adventure down to Canberra and you start campaigning to legalise hemp food products. And there's, you know, it's a story and it's funny, there's comedy used, and yeah, it's engaging. Students can live through that experience. They can kind of put on a bit of a role as well, like they can play a character in that game, like just by participating. They could be like a graduate nutrition student that's met this crazy person and has gone on an adventure. Yeah.
So it's industry-specific, interactive.
Yes.
Has it been launched to students?
Not yet,
It's
no.
pretty soon.
But we'll be launching it trimester 1 next year.
Okay, great. Do you go through a sort of a testing phase and that kind of thing? You're going to get people on?
Yeah, we're looking at comparing whether, at the moment, lecture-based presentations are being used to engage students with that content, and that it's not really working, but we're going to compare 2 groups and see which teaching method works best for knowledge retention. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, I've been experimenting a few years ago, I think it was last year or the year before. One of my videos, I put some links up, choose your own adventure style, where students could click on a link and get different perspectives of, I had one colleague in Geelong, a colleague in Burwood, myself and my dog. And when it comes down to it, and this leads to a question, my dog who was just barking and had some funny, you know, subtitles come up, she got way more views than probably the 3 academics put together. And there's a tension there that I'm pointing to of between education and what people sometimes derisively call edutainment. So how do you think that kind of issue plays out, and how do you respond to people who might feel that?
I think the word edutainment has had bad connotations in the past. I think it came out of the 90s. You know, there were all those games that like Carmen Sandiego was fantastic as an example. Yeah, but my point is, like, it changes every year. There's new words every year, and then people think that, well, you can't have fun when you learn because you're not taking it seriously. But you absolutely can have fun.
One other thing that I noticed in one of the links you sent was there was a course on gamification that is using video lectures. And I was interested to see that part of the assessment in that has integrated quiz questions throughout, which is part of the formal assessment. And so I'm interested in whether or not, you know, that might be worth trying, or, you know, in the end it comes down to trial and error.
Absolutely.
Whether or not it could, I just have to try it perhaps one year and see if it works, because I guess gamification is about play in the end, and not everything is fun or works, and you don't know until you try it.
Absolutely. Like I said, there's not one cookie cutter model, and we have meetings with academics where we try to scope projects and think, well, what's the best approach? And we've probably made videos in the past where that could have been an interactive game. It would have worked better. So it's all about trial and error. But I think some key aspects to utilising gamification are narrative, mystery, and and engaging students with digital technologies as well. Because when you think about the way that information is delivered to these digital native students every day, like making it accessible, because I can just pick up my phone and look at Facebook. You know, don't make it hard for us. You have to think about usability design, and when you think about Cloud Deakin, you know, it's a little bit clunky at times, then just delivery methods make it easy, accessible for students.
Yeah, great. You've actually touched on something I wanted to ask you as well toward the end. You mentioned the digital native issue, and a lot of students aren't necessarily matching up with that digital native expectation, but as I've been saying throughout the unit, it's probably even more important that they know of that expectation if they're not matching up to it. And in terms of your own social media use, I noticed you've started probably in the last 12 to 18 months being on Twitter, in a professional capacity. I'm presuming since you started at Deakin here. So I'm just wondering if you could give me, or give us, your sort of anecdotal experience using Twitter in terms of using it for networking and sharing content.
Well, I set up my Twitter, I think, back in 2009, just on a whim, because I didn't really know what Twitter was. And then I think I used it once to enter a competition, and then I didn't use it for the next 4 years after that.
You didn't win
No, I didn't win the MIF competition. It was disappointing. Yeah, Twitter's been fantastic for collaborating with professionals worldwide and sharing ideas and developing our ideas of gamification and e-learning. So that's been fantastic for me because there really are no boundaries anymore. Like, you can connect with people all over the world in a matter of seconds. And funny enough, that's how I met you, Adam.
It was, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, great.
So it's only been beneficial to my learning at work because I'm always constantly upskilling every day, you know, learning new programs and figuring out new ways of solving learning problems.
That's actually a really interesting point, I guess, to finish with a question on. One thing I notice is the people who don't use this kind of technology, they often assume rightly that it can take a lot of time. It takes a lot of effort, takes a lot of resources, often money as well. There are some people who also say that it's easier to make a video than it is to give an in-person presentation. I would actually contest that completely. But when it comes down to it, what do you picture yourself doing in perhaps a couple of years' time if you had no resource restrictions? Are we getting toward the immersive kind of three-dimensional worlds like, you know, Second Life? Deakin had a Second Life campus. It didn't really last very long. I think it's still there and it's kind of empty and a little bit lonely. There's no doubt a couple of people hanging around. But is that the kind of thing you see potentially you'll be doing?
Absolutely. Oh God, if you tell me there's no resource restrictions, like, my mind is just going off into this dream. I think, okay, in a perfect world, I think education will be so personalised and accessible that I'm referencing to a video here by Jane McGonigal. She works for the Institute for the Future. So they created a video about a student who woke up one day and he basically just logged on and his classroom was there and he had a one-on-one with his teacher and it was all automated, but his learning deficiencies were recognised. So he was able to just track his learning like through the system, and it was just, and because it was so personalised, it meant that he had more time to go out and get industry experience and network with people in the industry that he was looking to get into. So personalised, immersive, 3D environments, yeah, that's definitely where I see higher education going.
Yeah.
But I think it's going to take time because everything moves a little bit slower here than it does in the real world. But I mean, yeah, there's restrictions, there's funding, you know, we don't have bountiful resources at Deakin.
Right, and I suppose with the building of those kinds of worlds, the building, when we usually think game design, we think the designer, but online media is showing us that the designer is quite often the consumer or the producer or prosumer, as they're being called. So we really can't tell what the gamification of everyday life, the learning environments, the gaming environments, are already becoming more and more created by the users and the players. So I guess it'd be really amazing to see where it goes.
I'm just excited to be a part of it all.
Yeah, no, look, I envy you in your job. You're getting to make games and I'm not getting time to play any. So thank you very much for talking to us. It's been fantastic. And I'll put your Twitter handle up there and make sure you follow Danielle and keep an eye on what she's up to, because she's at the forefront of interactive learning at Deakin and gamification.